version.
Thank you very much. Our next guest says FinReg will lead to a, quote, new cycle of fraud and bailouts. We're joined now by Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn. Well, there could be fraud, there could be bailouts, and we wouldn't even know about it, at least from the SEC's perspective, because we're not allowed to look.
That's exactly right. And for an administration that was going to be more transparent, as the world gets more transparent, they become more opaque. And denying the documents is just another of these steps and another of the problems that are beginning to come forward from this bill.
I asked Scott Garrett if he knew about this provision that protects the SEC from folks who want to see what they're doing. He said he didn't. Did you know it was in there?
No, this is one of those things that between the House, between the Senate, between the conference, and the time it came back, there are these provisions that were tweaked and changed or pulled out and added. And, you know, David, this is what happens when you're not following the regular process to get in here and handle legislation. It doesn't go through the subcommittee, the committee, standard process. There again, more opaque, less transparent.
You know what it makes you feel like? It makes you feel like it's us versus them. We are a government of and by the people. We're supposed to be of and by the people. But the government now is them. It's not the people, it's them. And they are putting up these barriers, building greater barriers between us and them.
Well, exactly right. And it is to be of, by, and for the people. And this is one of the things that makes the American people so upset. It doesn't matter if it is health care or if it's financial regulation or if it is any of the number of other things that are coming up. Cap and trade, out of control federal spending. They've just revised the debt total upward again, 26.2, a marathon of debt by 2020. People have had it with what is happening here in Washington, and thank goodness that they have. It is time for the spending to be brought under control. It is time to restore some transparency so that people do know, and it is imperative that these agencies get off this track of trying to do their own thing and not be accountable to Congress and thereby the people of this country.
Well, people have had it with Congress. They've also had it with the insiders in Wall Street who've been working hand in glove with the people in the bureaucracies, whether it's Congress or the SEC or whomever. And the way to get rid of that, the way to instill trust, which is what we desperately need in the financial markets, is to have a transparent process. This is going in the opposite direction.
Well, precisely it is. And what you're seeing happen is the financial center of the universe moving from New York to Washington, D.C., and the economic engine moving from our Main Street and small businesses to these federal bureaucracies. And, David, as we work through this bill, as we see these different provisions that have been tweaked, we're going to find out more and more. You know, it's interesting, isn't it, that you have the speaker say, pass the health care bill so that we can find out what's in it. You have Chairman Dodd talk about the Frank Dodd bill and say, pass it so we can find out what is in it. This is what has happened when you have an unaccountable bureaucracy who has said, we've got to rush and do everything we can do before we get to the end of the year.
Well, and one provision that surprised us as well was Section 342, which requires all these agencies and financial institutions that deal with the agencies to create an Office of Minority and Women Inclusion, which requires racial profiling right up front and then requires a certain amount of racial quotas.
And look at this whole debate about having a Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection was to make certain that all of the reasons a bank was giving a loan and all this extra auditing and all this extra oversight of our community banks was done to make certain that people can afford the loan. And then you find out that there are these provisions in there that move it further away and put other conditions in place rather than focusing on the financial readiness of someone to carry a loan or purchase a house or purchase a car. So these are some of the provisions that are causing the American people again to say it is time for this nation to get its fiscal house in order. We have to stop this out-of-control spending. $26.2 trillion in debt by 2020 is not affordable. Our children and grandchildren cannot afford this bill.
Well, and transparency is great, but you got to walk the walk and not only talk the talk on that one. Representative Marsha Blackburn, great to